Hey everyone, welcome back to Custodome Productions. It's been a while. I haven't made a video in quite a long time, and a proper one in even longer. But I thought today I would come back and put something out at least, and give something a try that hopefully in future could be a little easy series for me to continue. And that's doing little artist discography rankings. And I thought I would start with the Doobie Brothers for a few reasons. Firstly, because this past year I've really gotten into the Doobie Brothers as sort of an album band. Beyond just their singles, I've really been listening to a lot of their records in full often. So I've started to develop a sort of feeling for each of them. And also because I didn't want to do another band like Steely Dan, for example, where I have a series running and I didn't want to spoil my thoughts on those albums moving forward. But I thought the Doobie Brothers were sort of tangential enough to Steely Dan. In that sort of style, I don't want to use the term yacht rock because I'm going to piss off half the comment section, but in that sort of musical vein, tangential enough that I think I can get away with it with the theme of this channel so far. And if people like this, hopefully I can make some more videos quite quickly in this vein, where I talk about some artists that I like and their albums. Also, just at the front end, I'm just going to say that I didn't listen to their last, 7, 8 albums. I only listened up to One Step Closer. They're sort of like late 80s revival onwards. I haven't heard. I'm sure it's going to annoy some Doobie Brothers purists who watch this video, but it's just gonna have to do. It annoys me when people do that with Steely Dan, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, with that out of the way, I guess I'll start going through this chronologically with their first album, the Doobie Brothers. This is the only record, I guess, that I hadn't heard before making this video. I sort of had the idea to do this about a week ago, and I checked this album out. For a long time I didn't even know this record existed, and it seems I'm not the only one because it only has about 500 ratings on Rate Your Music. It flew completely under the radar in its time and continues to do so today. I reckon there are plenty of people out there who wouldn't even know this album exists, who are fans of the Doobie Brothers, and for good reason. I don't think this album is terrible or anything, but it's pretty generic. It feels like a sort of very typical early 70s rock album with vague Doobie Brothers sort of flavouring. Typical first effort from a band like this. There's nothing particularly remarkable about it. I mean, you look at these track titles here like Chicago, Travelin' Man. I mean, that's like the most generic Greenwood Creek. And yeah, I really don't remember any songs on here. To be fair, I only listened to this the one time. Maybe it will grow on me if I listen to it anymore. Maybe it needs repeated listenings to find the hidden gems in here. Maybe I'll make a video one day where I'm talking about the Doobie Brothers' hidden masterpiece debut album, but yeah, for the most part I think that the fact this flew under the radar does not surprise me, because it really doesn't have the unique character that would develop on their next few albums, and for that reason I'm really feeling a C tier here. I'm rating these sort of based on the quality of other albums in the discography more so than just as in general. I think it would be closer to a B tier overall in just the grand scope of music, but for a Doobie Brothers album, this is definitely a C tier. Nothing particularly remarkable about it, and really only worth checking out if you're a completionist or if you're curious about their debut album. The same definitely cannot be said, however, for their follow-up, Toulouse Street, which is, in my opinion, functionally their debut. Not just because you have some great hits on here like Listen to the Music or Jesus Is Just Alright or Rockin' Down the Highway, which are my highlights from this album, by the way, but also because this is really where they found their sound. You can really tell that Tom Johnston and Patrick Simmons have worked out their style a lot more, and the result of that is a much more cohesive and much more successful album. But this is a really good starting point for getting into their early records. What the fuck is this? Sorry, I'm just taking a moment here to appreciate this advertisement on Rate Your Music. Anyway, yes, Toulouse Street is a really excellent sophomore album, definitely a vast improvement on their self-titled debut. And I think this is a very strong B tier, and the only reason I hesitate to put it higher than that is because I think their follow-up surpasses it even further. This is just a really strong album all the way through, and in my opinion this is the definitive album of their early sound, at least in terms of their really early sound, but I'll get into that soon. I think this is also around the time that Jeff Baxter joined the band, so you can really feel that the sort of development of their sound just through the increased participation of other great musicians on here. Yeah, Long Train Running and China Grover, I guess the big hits on here. I also really like Natural Thing, I really like South City Midnight Lady, and I also really like Ukiah. That being said, I do think that their sound as it develops is more personally to my taste, and so I'm going to put this in A tier. Might be a bit controversial actually, me not putting this in S tier, but I guess I'll get into that as we move forward. Next up, What Were Once Vices Are Now Habits. Bit of a wordy title, but nonetheless a pretty good album. And sort of like the first in the sort of middle part here with Stampede, where I feel like it's this sort of middle ground between their first 3 records, or their first 2 records, and then also their actual debut, and the Michael McDonald era, where I do feel like there is a sort of bit of a shift in their style that you can feel on songs like Songs to See You Through. You can see here featuring the Memphis horns. There's a little bit more incorporation of horns. I think there is a bit of a shift in their style at this point. Not a drastic one, as drastic as would come when Michael McDonald joined the band, but I think it's noticeable on this album and the next one. And it's a shift I actually really like. Songs like Song to See You Through, Blackwater obviously is the hit on from the album. Daughters of the Sea I particularly like. This is another really strong album all the way through, and I feel like kind of an underrated one in their discography. Yeah, you can see here a noticeable drop off in ratings between Captain and Me and Toulouse Street and then this one. Also just a noticeable fact that they don't have a single bolded album on Rate Your Music. I do wonder why that is, although I guess certain bands just don't have quite the same longevity as others, but I feel like that's kind of an oversight. I feel like people need to start appreciating the Doobie Brothers again, like they've started appreciating Steely Dan, because man, this is some good stuff. Anyway, back to the album. This is really good. I actually found this just randomly on CD at a music fair I went to with some friends, maybe 5 months ago, maybe more, half a year. I like these 2 albums a lot. I like these 2 albums quite a bit more than I think the consensus is. I'm actually going to put this album in A tier, although I'm going to put it just behind Captain and Me. Stampede. Kind of a weird album in many ways. Definitely sort of continues down the track of moving in a more eclectic direction than their first few albums, where they had a very sort of direct country rock sort of influenced feel, where there's a lot of stuff going on here. I mean, you have the Motown cover Take Me in Your Arms, which I think is excellent. One of my favorite songs on any of these albums, actually. I love that album. I love that song. And similarly, I adore Sweet Maxine. I think Sweet Maxine is an S-tier, almost called them Steely Dan, an S-tier Doobie Brothers song. I like Neil's Fandango. I like Music Man quite a lot. I like the sort of weird section in the middle here where you got Cheat the Hangman, which is this quite dark extended sort of piece that leads into this jazzy orchestral section, which I guess is called Precis. That's a really cool section of the album, but really weird. It is a strange album in a lot of ways, but I like it a lot. I own this one on vinyl, weirdly. I can't remember when I picked it up, but I own it on vinyl. And yeah, I think this is another one that is just really underrated. I mean, yeah, look, it's only got 700 ratings on Rate Your Music. People are sleeping on the Doobie Brothers, man. Especially this era. I am sort of debating where to put this one in comparison to the last 2, because, well, Take Me in Your Arms and Sweet Maxine are 2 of my absolute favourite Doobie Brothers songs. The tracklist is a little bit less consistent, I think. I'm not as big a fan of some of the other stuff on here, but I just think the strength of Sweet Maxine and Take Me in Your Arms puts this above Vices, but not quite above Captain and Me, which is probably the strongest of their original era. Okay, we are into the Michael McDonald era, and there it is, the dreaded Y word, yacht rock. Also jazz rock, which, I mean, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that inclusion on here, but yeah, this is an interesting album. I've never quite connected with it in the same way that I have with the next 2 albums, which we'll get into in a minute, but the more I listen to it, the more I like it, and the more I appreciate it as a complete piece as opposed to just a couple of songs. So the departure of Tom Johnston due to sickness sort of left a hole in the band, and Jeff Baxter sort of suggested the recruitment of Michael McDonald as a supplemental songwriter and singer, and well, obviously I think that solution paid off in the long run, but you can definitely feel some growing pains on here. Not in a major way, but just in the sense that, you know, this is only a year after their previous record, and you've got a complete shake-up in band membership, complete shake-up in style, and honestly, taking that into account, they really pull it off quite well. Wheels of Fortune is a great opener. It sort of signals a little bit of a different sound for the band while keeping it sort of similar to what they'd been doing before, and then you get into Taking It to the Streets, and it's an excellent Michael McDonald introduction. Keeps You Running is great as well. I like Carry Me Away. That's kind of a cute song about a jazz bar, I suppose. But yeah, this is really quite strong all the way through. It just lacks the consistency that would come on their next couple albums. But the more I listen to it, the more I like it, honestly. And again, only 800 ratings. Only 800 ratings. The lowest that a Steely Dan album has is 2,000. People really need to stop sleeping on the Doobie Brothers. I keep saying it, but man, it's true. In terms of where I'd rank it, it's difficult. I think I'm going to put it just behind Vices. This is a difficult section to separate, but yeah, my instinct is to put it just there. I think if any of these rankings are going to shift in the future, it's going to be this section here, these 3 albums. Livin' on the Fault Line, baby. God, this album is fucking good. Holy shit, 600 ratings, again, and a 3.14 average is obscene for this album. This is excellent stuff. Yeah, I mean, look, I love early Doobie Brothers, and every time I listen to one of these albums, it grows on me. I totally get the appeal of these records over the latest stuff and why people prefer these ones. But man, this yacht rock stuff is, in my opinion, when they're at their strongest, and this is where, for me, that sound comes completely into its own, because you just have a selection of songs here that is absolutely exceptional. You're Made That Way, Echoes of Love, Little Darling I Need You, which is a Marvin Gaye cover, You Belong to Me, Livin' on the Fault Line, and Nothing But a Heartache. Incredible. I love all of those songs. The only problem with this album, and the only problem why I have it at a 9 rather than a 10 right now, is, and this is a bit of a theme for Doobie Brothers albums for me, I feel like it is a little bit front-loaded, because once you get into the last 4, Chinatown, There's a Light, Need a Lady, and this sort of like final instrumental piece at the end here, I'm not as keen on any of them. I feel like once I get to the 6th track, sometimes I actually just stop listening, not because any of these songs are particularly bad. In fact, I would say I like all of them, but this is just an incredibly strong selection of 6, in my opinion, classic yacht rock songs. I'm not actually sure if you would include all of these as yacht rock, but it's 11:15 p.m. here, so this is an excellent album cover too, by the way. I love this album cover and this album title. And yeah, for me, this is just where Michael McDonald comes into his own as a songwriter. And I suppose one of the only other drawbacks of this album is that although this 6-song opening selection here is excellent, it is very Michael McDonald heavy, and well, we'll get into the strengths of Minute by Minute in a moment, where it combines the strengths of both eras of the band maybe better than this one. But for me, that 6-song run just puts it into S tier for a Doobie Brothers album immediately. In my opinion, this is a criminally slept on album by any standards, by Doobie Brothers standards, by music standards in general. But boy, we are into magnum opus territory where we're looking at Minute by Minute. It's an iconic album, and really, yeah, the genre here of yacht rock is very appropriate, because this is the definitive yacht rock album in my opinion. In terms of strength of track listing, I mean, this is just really as good as it gets. Here to Love You, What a Fool Believes, Minute by Minute, Dependent on You, Open Your Eyes, Sweet Feelin', You Never Change, How Do the Fool Survive. I mean, I did skip over Steam Breakdown and Don't Stop to Watch the Wheels, but they're good as well. But I mean, putting aside just the strength of the hits, What a Fool Believes and Minute by Minute, which are of course iconic, you know, Dependent on You last year was for a while one of my absolute favourite songs probably ever. I was repeating that all the time. Here to Love You is probably their best album opener. Sweet Feelin' is a really cool song. Open Your Eyes is excellent as well. How Do the Fool Survive is a fun album closer. You Never Change is good as well. I think the strength of this album mostly comes not just from the strength of its songwriting, but from how well it combines the 2 eras of the Doobie Brothers. You can definitely feel that the yacht rock Michael McDonald sound is taking precedence here, but on tracks like Dependent on You or Sweet Feelin', you can feel more of a cohesion with the older sound rather than just a complete replacement. And there are songs on here like Don't Stop to Watch the Wheels and Steam Breakdown, which I believe the latter is an instrumental actually, that sort of harken back to that early sound of the Doobie Brothers. And I think they're nice inclusions, even if they are probably the weakest on here, and even if I feel like that sound is getting a little bit long in the tooth by this point. I mean, it's 1978, it's like Led Zeppelin making a record in 1978, like, get over yourself, guys. But that being said, yeah, this is not just an S tier for me, but also increasingly an absolute favourite album of mine. For me, this is definitive feel-good music. I put these albums on when I'm feeling a little bit anxious or down. They're just excellent pop songwriting all the way through, with more sophistication and more consistency than I think most of their contemporaries in the yacht rock scene, Steely Dan accepted, who, you know, Steely Dan is Steely Dan. And then finally, One Step Closer, the apparently much maligned One Step Closer, because wow, a 2.84 from 500, or 400 ratings, sorry, is quite harsh. really quite harsh for a record that I really think is quite solid. Increasingly, I like this more and more actually. I listened to it again maybe for the third or fourth time today, and yeah, it grows on me. The first time I heard this, it really sort of washed over me. I didn't get anything much out of it at all, but the more I listen to it, the more I like it, and over the past year and a half, Real Love and Dedicate This Heart have slipped easily into my S-tier Doobie Brothers songs. For me, they absolutely lift this album into another tier. That being said, none of these song titles jump out to me as additional highlights from the first two, and I do feel like at this point the pop yacht rock sound has fully taken over to an extent that does almost become a little bit bland by the end. And though I'm never going to complain about hearing some jazzy, bluesy yacht rock with Michael McDonald on lead vocals, and there are enjoyable moments consistently throughout, this is definitely a step backwards. The crowded lineup on this album cover, where it feels like they've all been awkwardly shoved in together, is really an indication of the sort of directionlessness of this album overall. It feels like they're floundering a little bit to follow up from a record like Minute by Minute, and really just going through the motions on a lot of these songs, which feel like slightly poor imitations of some of the much better stuff that they've done on previous records. But with that being said, I mean, whenever I listen to it, I always enjoy it. So for that reason, I'm going to put this in B tier, but I'm going to put it just behind Toulouse Street. So that's my ranking of the Doobie Brothers albums. Let me know what you think of these records. Let me know if you have a ranking of your own, what you agree with me on, what you disagree with me on. Be as rude as you like, I don't care. Boost my engagement in the algorithm anyway. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next video.